The morning sun painted the African savanna in shades of gold and amber. Acacia trees stood like ancient guardians across the endless grassland, their shadows dancing gently in the warm breeze. In the small village of Kibaoni, nestled between rolling hills and a crystal-clear river, life moved at the peaceful rhythm it had known for generations. 8-year-old Django woke that morning with excitement bubbling in his chest. Today was the day his father had promised to take him to collect honey from the tall baobab tree. Near the river, his grandmother had been telling stories about that magical tree for years. How it was older than the village itself, how its trunk was so wide that 10 grown men holding hands couldn't wrap around it. But when Django ran to find his father, the house felt strangely quiet. His mother sat by the cooking fire, her face tight with worry. "Your father left before dawn," she said softly. "The cattle wandered too far last night. He went to bring them back." She touched Django's cheek gently. "You must wait, my son. The savannah can be dangerous for little boys." Django nodded, but his heart sank. He had been dreaming about this adventure for weeks. As the hours passed and the sun climbed higher, his excitement turned into restless energy. By midday, when his father still hadn't returned, Django made a decision that would change his life forever. He slipped away from the village while his mother was washing clothes by the river. Just a quick walk to the baobab tree, he told himself. He would collect some honey and surprise his parents when they returned. What could go wrong? The path seemed simple enough at first. Django had walked this way with the other village children many times, though never alone. The familiar sights of home gradually faded behind him as he ventured deeper into the wild grassland. The baobab tree stood majestically in the distance, its massive trunk gleaming white in the afternoon sun. But the African savanna has a way of playing tricks on young eyes. Distances that seem short can stretch for hours. Hills that look small can hide deep valleys. And as Django walked and walked, the baobab tree seemed to drift further away rather than closer. The first sign of trouble came when the sun began to sink toward the horizon. Django turned to look back toward his village, but all he could see was endless grass and scattered trees. His heart began to race. Which way was home? Every direction looked the same now. If you've ever felt that moment, when excitement turns to fear, when adventure becomes survival, you'll understand what Django felt in that moment. And if you're enjoying this journey with our brave little boy, a quick like on this story would mean the world to us. As we continue to share these incredible tales, night falls fast in Africa. As darkness crept across the savannah, Django found himself truly alone for the first time in his life. The sounds that had seemed friendly during the day, the rustle of grass, the call of birds, the distant grunt of hippos by the river, now felt mysterious and frightening. He found a small cluster of rocks and curled up between them, trying to stay warm. His stomach growled with hunger, and his throat felt dry and scratchy. But worse than the physical discomfort was the crushing loneliness. He thought of his mother, probably searching frantically for him by now. He thought of his father, who might have returned to find his son missing. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he whispered prayers to his ancestors. That's when he heard it, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. Django's blood turned to ice. He knew that sound from the stories his grandfather told around the evening fire. It was the call of a lion. The sound came again, closer this time. Django pressed himself deeper into the rocks, his small body trembling. Through the moonlight, he could see a massive shadow moving through the grass. Golden eyes gleamed in the darkness, fixed directly on him. The lion was enormous, with a thick mane that flowed like a river of gold around his powerful shoulders. Each step made no sound, but Django could feel the ground vibrate under the grate. Cat's weight. This was Simba, though Django didn't know the lion's name yet. The villagers had heard stories of this magnificent creature for years, but few had ever seen him. Django held his breath, certain these would be his last moments. The lion approached slowly, deliberately, until they were close enough that Django could see his reflection in those ancient golden eyes. But then something extraordinary happened. Instead of the attack Django expected, the lion sat down. He tilted his great head to one side, studying the small boy with what looked almost like curiosity. Minutes passed in perfect silence. "Boy," Lion regarded each other across the vast gap between their worlds. Then, to Django's amazement, the lion lay down in the grass nearby, as if standing guard. The great cat's presence, instead of terrifying, began to feel oddly comforting. Dawn came, slowly, painting the sky in soft pastels. Django woke to find the lion still there, watching over him like a gentle giant. When Django sat up, rubbing his eyes, the lion rose too. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then the lion began to walk away, pausing to look back as if inviting Django to follow. What choice did the boy have? He was completely lost, and this magnificent creature seemed to know where he was going. Django stood on shaky legs and began to follow the lion across the savannah. What happened next was like something from a dream. The lion led Django to a small spring hidden among the rocks, where crystal-clear water bubbled up from deep underground. Django drank deeply, the cool water soothing his parched throat. Then the lion padded over to a fig tree heavy with ripe fruit. He sat beneath it and looked at Django meaningfully. Django understood. He climbed the tree and ate until his stomach stopped growling, sharing some of the sweet figs with his unlikely companion. The lion accepted the offering with a dignity that made Django feel like he was dining with royalty. As they continued their journey together, Django began to notice how the lion moved through the landscape. Every step seemed purposeful, every pause meaningful. The great cat was reading the land like a book written in a language Django was only beginning to understand. But their peaceful journey was about to face its greatest test. As they crested a small hill, Django saw something that made his heart leap with joy and terror at the same time. In the distance, a group of men from his village was searching for him, calling his name across the grassland. His father was among them, along with his uncles and several other brave men. But between Django and his rescuers was a problem that made his blood run cold. A pack of wild dogs had caught the scent of the search party and was moving to investigate. These weren't the friendly dogs from the village. These were lean, hungry predators with yellow eyes and powerful jaws. The lion sensed the danger immediately. His whole body tensed, and a low growl rumbled from his chest. Django watched in amazement as his protector seemed to grow even larger, his mane bristling with fierce energy. What happened in the next few minutes would become legend in Kibaoni village. The lion stepped forward, placing himself between Django and the approaching pack. His roar echoed across the savannah like thunder, a sound so powerful that birds took flight from trees half a mile away. The wild dogs hesitated, recognizing the voice of the true king of this land. But hunger made them bold, and they began to circle, looking for an opening. That's when Django did something that surprised even himself. Instead of running or hiding, he stood up beside his lion friend and shouted as loudly as his small voice could manage, "Go away. Leave us alone." His voice cracked with emotion, but it carried all the courage his 8-year-old heart could muster. The lion glanced at Django with what seemed like approval, then let out another earth-shaking roar. This time, the wild dogs had heard enough. They scattered in all directions, disappearing into the tall grass like shadows. The commotion had attracted the attention of the search party. Django could hear his father's voice getting closer, calling his name with desperate hope. And that's when the most remarkable moment of all occurred. As the men appeared over the ridge, they stopped dead in their tracks. There, in full view, was little Django standing beside the largest lion any of them had ever seen. The great cat sat calmly, like a loyal dog waiting for instructions from his master. Django's father, Kimani, was known throughout the village as a brave man who feared nothing. But seeing his son in the company of this magnificent predator made his knees weak. He raised his spear, ready to fight for his child's life. But Django called out to him, "No, father, don't hurt him. He saved me." What followed was a moment of perfect stillness. The men stood frozen, unsure whether to attack or retreat. The lion remained calm, his golden eyes moving from face to face as if taking the measure of each man. And little Django stood between them all, the bridge between two worlds. Then the lion did something that would be talked about around evening fires for generations to come. He rose gracefully to his feet, walked over to Django, and gently nuzzled the boy's hand with his great muzzle. It was a gesture so tender, so clearly affectionate, that even the bravest warriors felt tears prick their eyes. After this gentle goodbye, the lion turned and walked away with the dignity of a king. Leaving his court, he paused once at the top of a distant hill, his magnificent silhouette outlined against the afternoon sky, then disappeared into the vast savannah. Django ran to his father, who swept him up in arms that trembled with relief and amazement. The other men gathered around, all talking at once, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. As they walked back toward the village, Django told his story. He spoke of his foolish decision to venture out alone, of his terror when night fell, of the lion who had appeared like a guardian spirit. He described the gentle way the great cat had led him to water and food, had protected him through the night, had faced down the wild dogs without hesitation. The men listened in wonder, but it was Django's father who understood the deeper meaning of what had happened. "The ancestors sent him to you, my son," Kimani said softly. "The lion is the spirit of our land, and he recognized the spirit in your heart." When they reached Kibaoni village, word of Django's adventure spread like wildfire. His mother held him close, crying tears of joy and relief. His grandmother nodded knowingly, as if she had expected something like this all along. But the most amazing part of the story was yet to come. From that day forward, the great lion was sometimes seen at the edges of the village, always at a respectful distance, but clearly watching over the community. The villagers began to call him Django's lion, and they spoke of him with a reverence usually reserved for sacred things. Children who had been afraid to play near the forest boundaries now felt safe knowing their guardian was watching. Farmers reported that their crops were no longer raided by wild animals. Even the cattle seemed calmer, as if they too could sense the protective presence of the great cat. Django himself was changed by his adventure. The boy who had been impulsive and sometimes careless became thoughtful and wise beyond his years. He spent hours sitting at the edge of the village, looking out toward the savannah, sometimes catching a glimpse of golden eyes watching him from the tall grass. Years passed, and Django grew into a young man known throughout the region for his wisdom and courage. He became a storyteller like his grandmother, sharing the tale of his encounter with the lion with children from many villages. But he always ended his story with the same message: the wild animals are not our enemies, they are our brothers and sisters, sharing this land that belongs to all of us. The bond between boy and lion became a symbol of harmony between the human and animal worlds. Other villages began to report similar encounters, moments of unexpected kindness between their people and the wild creatures of Africa. It was as if Django's story had opened a door to understanding that had been closed for too long. On Django's 18th birthday, something magical happened. As the village celebrated with singing and dancing around the evening fire, a familiar silhouette appeared on the hill overlooking their home. The great lion, now showing gray in his magnificent mane, sat watching the celebration like a proud father observing his son's coming of age. Django excused himself from the party and walked slowly up the hill. Man and lion met again after all those years, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The lion allowed Django to place his hand on the great mane, a gesture of respect and remembrance. As if sensing that this was their final meeting, the lion gazed into Django's eyes one last time, then turned and walked majestically into the African night. Some say he returned to the eternal hunting grounds where all brave spirits go. Others believe he still watches over the savannah, guardian of the ancient bond between all living things. Django returned to his village that night knowing that he had been blessed with something rare and precious, a friendship that crossed the boundaries between species, a love that transcended fear, and a story that would inspire countless generations to see the world through eyes of wonder rather than suspicion. The boy who had once been lost in the wilderness had found something far greater than his way home. He had discovered that courage comes not from conquering our fears, but from opening our hearts to the unexpected magic that surrounds us every day. And in the quiet moments before dawn, when the African savannah holds its breath between night and day, they say you can still hear the echo of a great lion's roar, not a sound of threat or warning, but a song of protection and love that binds all of Africa's children together under the vast, star-filled sky. Thank you for journeying with us through this incredible tale of friendship and courage. Stories like Django's remind us that the most extraordinary adventures often begin with the simplest acts of trust and kindness. In a world that sometimes feels divided, may we all have the wisdom to recognize the guardians that watch over us and the courage to extend our own protection to those who need it most.